With the coup attempt that took place in Benin Republic, I think that the coup attempt was more serious than the let on, because we saw that there's the news that the head of the Beninese army they attacked his residence, the wife was killed, and they tried to attack the presidential palace, presidential residence, and they did not succeed. They called for Nigerians, the help of Nigeria. Nigeria sent Air Force uh, fighter jets to assist the Beninese. And we've seen that today the president has made a request for Nigerian troops to go on a peacekeeping mission in Benin. I think there are suggestions that Nigerian troops were already on the ground in Benin. So for it to have happened such that the Beninese needed the help of Nigeria in order to thwart the coup, and there were reports that the coup plotters were fleeing in a convoy and the convoy was attacked by Nigeria's fighter jet. You know, so it was a serious coup attempt. It's not just a few soldiers who took over a station. I think it was more serious than that, and that has informed the seriousness with which the situation is being taken. If it's just a small group of soldiers that did this, then there will not be need for a peacekeeping force. And ECOWAS has said that they will send in, they have a standby force composed of soldiers from different West African countries, and so they will send them in. And we see that ECOWAS has stated that ECOWAS Commission leader has stated that the situation now requires West Africa being in a state of emergency, that this situation is not just one country after another, that is a widespread West African regional problem, and it has to be viewed as such. So the President Tinubu sought the approval of the Senate, and the Senate gave the approval for Nigeria to send troops to Benin on a peacekeeping mission. And then there was another development after the coup attempt in Benin. There is an aircraft, a Nigeria Air Force aircraft, that according to the Air Force, it was on its way to Portugal. It left Nigeria on its way to Portugal for maintenance. And then when it was crossing the airspace of Burkina Faso, it developed some technical issues, and that they have to do emergency landing. And they sought the approval of the airport where they landed. They landed and they were well received initially. It was when the authorities at the headquarters of Burkina Faso, when they now heard of what has taken place, and when other uh, countries in the Alliance of Sahel States, AES, that is Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, an alliance of West African countries that have pulled out of ECOWAS and formed their own unit. So when those countries heard of the Nigerian aircraft, Air Force aircraft, that they got concerned about it, I don't think you will not blame the AES, Alliance of Sahel States. A coup just took place in Benin, and Nigerians sent fighter jets and military into Benin to assist the Beninese government. So if an aircraft now flew into one of their territories, this Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, just soon after Nigeria sent air force to help in Benin. You know, they would think that, oh, maybe it's not just Benin, that an attempt is being made to also uh, uh, take action in their countries. So their fears and worries was not entirely baseless. But then, according to the Nigerian Air Force, there is a rule, international rule, aviation rule, that if an airplane is flying and it has issue, it can seek emergency landing, you know, and the emergency landing has to be at the nearest airport, so they don't have to now say, oh, let's go back to our country or go to a country that is more friendly and stuff like that. You can land as soon as possible, so as to save lives and save the aircraft as well. And so if that is really the case, that should at least assuage the minds of the Burkinabes, and also assuage the AES countries that um, this was just routine. It was a technical issue that led to this, and I don't. It's not a fighter jet. It's not an armed aircraft, you know, such that they would think that, oh, they came to attack their country. This one was, according to what he said, is a transport airplane or a cargo airplane, with 11 personnel, two pilots and 11 passengers in this aircraft. So, so there's been diplomatic maneuvers, talks between Nigerian government and Burkina Faso, and I think it has paid off. The 11 Nigerian Air Force personnel has been released, and they've been asked to come back home. But from the report, it appears the aircraft is still in Burkina Faso, but they allowed the personnel to come back. I think it's a show of good faith, to so that a show of goodwill, that they don't intend unnecessarily keeping the Nigerian personnel there. So while working to see what exactly is the issue with the aircraft, they've sent the Air Force personnel back to Nigeria, which is a good thing. You know, Burkina Faso should know that they don't have a it's not a beef between Burkina Faso and Nigeria. Nigeria only intervened in Benin. You know, Nigeria did not intervene in Burkina Faso, it did not intervene in Mali, it did not intervene in Niger. Even though the Tinubu government in its early days, when the Niger coup took place, wanted to intervene, but then they did not. And then interestingly, at that time, Niger is a former colony of France. And so France was really putting pressure on President Tinubu then to intervene in Niger. But then we saw when the president sought the approval of the Nigerian Senate said no, Nigeria should not intervene in Niger. You know, so this Beninese coup, that's attempted coup, Benin, is also a former colony of France. It's a French-speaking country, and so the president of France has been heavily invested in this attempted coup, and it appears that the president of France, was among those that urged the Nigerian government to intervene as soon as possible. So it's a good thing that that has been resolved in terms of the Nigerian personnel being released from Burkina Faso. As to the Benin itself, the president of Benin, Talon, has addressed the nation, And he also sent his appreciation to the Nigerian government for the assistance they offered. So I listened to the interview that was granted by Femi Falana, SAN, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, a human rights activist and eminent lawyer. He said that, you know, the when asked whether there was the likelihood of more coup happening in Benin, and he said it's likely that there could be more coup in the future. And the point he raised is that throughout the West African region, he mentioned several countries like Togo, like Cote d'Ivoire, where presidents, their leaders there have maneuvered the constitution and all that for them to stay longer in power. Alassane Ouattara of Cote d'Ivoire just got sworn in for the fourth term as president. So the point that Femi Falana made is that these West African countries, they will squeeze out the opposition, they drive out opposition members, jail of opposition members, make sure there's no opposition, change the constitution and make it possible for them to continue much longer in power, that they don't promote democratic principles and democratic values. And when they don't allow opposition to thrive, then at the end of the day, what you now have is just a one-party state. And it drew parallel to what is happening in Nigeria. And Nigeria too is driving towards that one-party state situation, you know. So, and I've said as much in a previous video I made, that it's important that, like in Nigeria, that the president should allow for other opposition parties to thrive, should allow them to survive. The issue of causing so much disruption and chaos in opposition parties, shouldn't be the case. Opposition should be allowed to thrive. If you are truly practicing democracy, opposition should thrive, because the opposition thriving gives platform for people who are not happy with the government. It gives a platform for activists, for ordinary citizens who are not happy with the current government, and they now seek that opposition platform as an avenue to express their grievances, by supporting the opposition parties. And so when you have situations whereby these opposition parties are not allowed to thrive, where when they are not seen as viable mechanism for which people can express their grievance towards the ruling government, then at the end of the day, what happens is that when the opposition parties are so diminished, are um, uh, so not allowed to operate as they should, then people will now seek for other ways to express their anger and frustration, and that will not always be to the good of the country, and that could sow seeds for these military coup that are taking place.